one of my handouts in front of you. Everyone's good? Okay. It has 4 questions on it, double-sided. Cool. So, usually I tell people to not bother trying to actually take the test, but this time I wanted you guys to answer the 4 questions on your own so that I can see throughout it how many people would not have gotten it right if they didn't use the tips that I'm doing, if anyone would have gotten the questions wrong. So I'm just curious about that. Okay, so who here, my name is Samantha. Hi. So, who here has taken a judge test, or any kind of test really, recently, like in the last couple of months? Okay, so when you took those tests, did any of you feel that there was an area you could use improvement in, or that you got any questions wrong on those tests? Anything? Yeah?
Yeah.
Did you feel that you had issues with those questions because you didn't know the information, or for a different reason? Like, did anyone feel like when they found out the right answer, that they realized, oh, I did know that, darn it? Like, did anyone have that kind of reaction?
Yeah, no, I tend to read it wrong.
Okay, that is a reason why you would get something wrong if you misread the question. So, okay. And then there's always going to be times where you get a question wrong and you read the correct answer and you're going to kick yourself because you knew that. Like, you studied that. You knew that piece of information. And then you get the question wrong because for some reason you cheat yourself out of that correct answer. So, my presentation is not about teaching you the information that's going to be on the judge test. I'm assuming that if you're going to take a judge test, a level 1 test, a level 2 test, a practice test, that you're going into it, at least for the level 1 and level 2 test, knowing your subject matter. You've studied, you've judged a couple of events, you've had a mentor, in some way, you know what's on the test. So if you don't have the information going in, my presentation's not going to help you. What my presentation is about is if you know the information, making sure that you don't cheat yourself out of correct answers by second-guessing yourself, by misreading the questions, by doing anything that will make it so that you turn a right answer into a wrong answer. So that's what this presentation is about. So the most important thing before taking a test is, to know the information. I mean, I'm not going to in any way say that's not important. That's the most important thing. So a lot of people go into tests and they doubt themselves. They choke, they overthink things, and it's not a good thing. So I'm going to try to make it so that you go confidently into your test and you're not covered in like self-doubt and anxiety. So there's certain conceits that are used in all judge tests. The active player's name is always going to be starting with an A, and the non-active player's name is always going to be starting with an N. So I've used the same conceits on my example questions that you have in front of you, and I tried to write these questions as closely as possible to the format that are actually in the real judge test. Though, as I'm sure all of you know, you're not allowed to actually share questions that were on your judge test, so I had to make all these examples up by myself and not actually steal ones that were actually on tests. Okay, there's also 2 types of questions on a judge exam. The first is the standard multiple choice, and you're going to be given 5 answers. You have to pick the single answer that you feel best fits the question. These answers have circular bubbles next to them. And the second type is choose all that apply. And these are going to have square bubbles next to the answers. And for these ones, you can select 0 correct answers, 1 correct answer, 2, and so on, as many as all of them correct. So let's see. When I take a test, whether it's a 10-question test or a 100-question test, I'm trying to look at each question as if it's the only one. So I don't look at, oh my God, I have 75 more questions to go. This is impossible. Like, that's not going to help anyone. So just maybe take a piece of paper or something and cover up, if you see 2 on a page, like cover up the other one. So all you see is the question that is in front of you, and then focus your energy on that question. You can get that question right. And when you're done with that one, go to the next one. And so on until you've gotten all of the questions hopefully correct. Also, the judge tests are untimed, so don't worry about how long you're taking. It's an untimed test. You can take as long as you want, and just do your best to get the answers right. Also, when you read the question, try to think about what answer you would like there to be before reading any of the answers. So if you read the question, you think, okay, I generally think this is the answer. Then read the answers and find the one that best matches what you know is correct. Because if you just read the answers, you might get tricked by them trying to use tricky wording and things like that. But if you know going in, like, I know this is what the answer should be, let me find that on the list. But also make sure you read every answer and make sure you read every part of every answer. Because if you read the first half of an answer and like, oh, this sounds perfect, check, moving on, then maybe something at the end of the answer is a little bit off, or maybe two of the answers have the same beginning that are both right, but one of them's correct and one of them's wrong because there's something else in it. So make sure you read all of them and make sure you read every answer and the full amount of every answer. Also, it can help to write on the test. That's a big point that I feel like I can't stress enough. Take your pencil and circle keywords in the answers, and then write a note about your thought process in circling the word. You could also write, because on the test you're going to have the question, and then you're going to have the stats of any permanents that are relevant to the question, that are mentioned, and then you're going to have the answers. So sometimes it'll be like, Anna controls these things, and Naomi controls these things, and then Anna's attacking, and Naomi's blocking, and then this enchantment's in play, and then this sorcery is being played. And all of these cards are going to be there. So if you write A or N on the little images of the cards, then it can make it so that when you don't have to keep in mind which things are on whose side of the board, you've already got that because you can visually see the A and the N next to it. And the more space you free up in your mind to think about how they're interacting, the more clear it's going to be for you. So it might help to write that to be able to make those differentiations without having to reread the question over and over to remember, wait, was the Nova Blast Worm Anna's or was that Naomi's or Nicole's or whoever's name I gave you? Okay, so we're going to go to example 1. Here we go. So, example 1. Aiden controls a Tarmogoyf and has a sorcery in his graveyard. Nancy controls a Skullkin and has no cards in her graveyard. Nancy activates Skullkin's activated ability targeting Tarmogoyf. What happens? Okay, then we've got the stats for Tarmogoyf and Skullkin. Okay, so A.
Skullkin up to
Skullkin's ability triggers and is put on the stack. The ability resolves and does 2 damage to Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf is destroyed. Skullkin is put into Nancy's graveyard and Tarmogoyf is put into Aiden's graveyard simultaneously. Okay, so we're reading this, and if we were going to circle something or like underline something or put a note next to something, what terms or concepts would you notate to make sure that you remember that this seems right or seems wrong? Anything that anybody would put a note next to?
I underline the sacrifice.
Okay, and what note would you put next to sacrifice?
That's going to be in the graveyard before the ability resolves.
Okay, so you'd underline that in the question, because I don't think the word sacrifice is in my first answer.
No, I would just on the card itself. I would.
Okay, so you would in the on the test in the question you would underline the word sacrifice.
Under the actual where it actually shows the creature itself as it gives the ability.
Sacrifice.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're underlining sacrifice on the card, not in the answer, but just reminding yourself that you need to make sure you have an answer where that goes to the graveyard first.
Yeah.
So you could also
I was just trying to say that there's another one, triggers and activate. Yes.
Okay, so first with the sacrifice, you could underline it simultaneously in the answer, because that's the part that sort of disproves the sacrifice, and that's what's wrong with that. That's one thing that's wrong with that answer, the word simultaneously, because you knowing that sacrificing a creature is going to go to the graveyard first, it's not going simultaneously. So you might underline simultaneously and put like sacrifice or something like that to remind yourself, in addition to underlining sacrifice in the creature ability. And then also you could underline as it triggers, because it's an ability. The ability triggers, and if you look at both Tarmogoyf and Skullkin, none of them have any triggered ability. We've got static abilities, we've got activated abilities, but there's nothing that triggers on either of those cards. Okay, so we have things going to the graveyard simultaneously, we have things triggering. A is looking like it's probably not the right answer. However, we're going to read all their answers and see what we think for a B. Skullkin's ability is announced and is put on the stack. Skullkin is sacrificed as part of the cost of activating its ability, and is put into Nancy's graveyard. Tarmogoyf's ability triggers and is put on the stack. Tarmogoyf's triggered ability resolves, giving Tarmogoyf a +1/+1 counter. Skullkin's ability resolves and does 2 damage to Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf is not destroyed. Alright, so this one, we do have the word sacrificed in. So that part, they're not going to the graveyard simultaneously, so that point has been addressed in B. It does still say the word triggers. This time it's referring to Tarmogoyf's triggered ability, which doesn't exist. Is there anything else you'd underline other than
the put a counter.
As we know, Tarmogoyf has a characteristic defining ability that makes its power and toughness certain way, but it does not get +1/+1 counters due to this ability.
Unless you put something, huh?
Right, but due to its own ability only, it does not gain +1/+1 counters. So yeah, that's something you might want to underline and be like, X, no +1/+1 counters. Okay. C. Skullkin's ability is announced and put on the stack. Skullkin is sacrificed as part of the cost of activating its ability and is put into Nancy's graveyard. The ability resolves and does 2 damage to Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf is not destroyed. Okay, so in this one, the things we've noticed earlier, we had Skullkin is sacrificed. You said that matches. That seems good. They're not going simultaneously. We also do not have the word triggered anywhere in this one, so there's nothing in there to underline or anything. There's no mention of +1/+1 counters. Is there anything anyone would mention about answer C that they would put a particular note on? Anything? Okay. Well, C seems pretty solid as an answer. However, we're going to read the rest of the answers because we want to make sure we didn't miss anything. Because if 2 of them sound good, then we want to reread those 2 and make sure which one is the correct one. So, D. Skullkin's ability is announced and is put on the stack. The ability resolves and does 2 damage to Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf is destroyed. Skullkin is put into Nancy's graveyard and Tarmogoyf is put into Aiden's graveyard simultaneously. Okay, we've already notated simultaneously earlier as something we don't like, so this one's going back to the thing we didn't like about A. It doesn't specifically mention triggers, which is good, but it does say that they go simultaneously, which is incorrect. So we can sort of go to E now. Skullkin's ability triggers and is put on the stack. Skullkin is sacrificed as part of its ability triggering and is put into Nancy's graveyard. The ability resolves and does 2 damage to Tarmogoyf. Tarmogoyf is not destroyed. Okay, so this one doesn't go simultaneously, but again, we have the triggers. So we've already decided trigger equals bad, so we're probably going to go with C for this one. So when you guys did this question prior to me starting my presentation, did anyone pick, who picked C? Is there anyone who picked anything other than C? Okay, so you guys, okay. You guys seem pretty good on this one.
No, not you.
Okay, so trigger was a really good thing to note. Simultaneous and sacrifice were also good things to note. So these were things that you could circle or that you could underline that would make you eliminate options, and being able to eliminate options based on the knowledge you went into this question knowing is really helpful. So you can just ignore any that have those words or that have those concepts. Okay, now we're going to look at example 2. Avery attacks with a cursed spirit. Which of the following can legally block? Choose all that apply. Okay, so this is a choose all that apply answer, so we could have more than one correct answer, or we could have no correct answers. Okay, so we look at a cursed spirit, and we probably want to see what is it about a cursed spirit that is going to make it so anything that generally couldn't legally block. What is it about a cursed spirit that makes it have a blocking restriction?
Intimidate.
Right, intimidate. Okay, so we know that intimidate, as it says in the reminder text here, this creature can't be blocked except by artifact creatures and or creatures that share a color with it. Okay, so we're going to look at A through E and see which of these can legally block a cursed spirit. So how about Quickling? Who here believes that Quickling is able to block a cursed spirit? Anyone? Okay. Who can tell me why Quickling is unable to block a cursed spirit?
It's blue and it's not an artifact.
Okay, so Quickling is blue. It is also not an artifact. This was probably put in as an answer because they just wanted to make sure you understood generally what intimidate means. So we're not going to mark that one. Okay, how about Blade Tusk Boar? Who thinks Blade Tusk Boar is able to block a cursed spirit? Okay. Why can Blade Tusk Boar not block a cursed spirit? Right. So this one probably, it also has Intimidate, so this was probably put on here so that to make sure that you understand that one Intimidate creature cannot necessarily block another Intimidate creature. So this is probably making sure you understand that particular point. Okay, how about Gnarled Scarhide? Who here believes that Gnarled Scarhide can block a cursed spirit?
Can't block anything.
Okay, so Gnarled Scarhide, the last two we eliminated because they were not black and not artifacts. Well, Gnarled Scarhide is black. And so according to a cursed spirit's blocking restriction, Gnarled Scarhide should be able to block it.
Yeah.
However, as was mentioned, it has a specific thing saying Gnarled Scarhide can't block as an ability on its own card. So this is an example if you're only looking at a cursed spirit's blocking restrictions, then you're not going to read all of Gnarled Scarhide and realize that it has its own restriction about blocking. So being able to read the entire card for everyone is very important, and Gnarled Scarhide is obviously there to see if you have read the entire card and not just the color identity of the card. So you were correct, Gnarled Scarhide cannot block a cursed spirit or anything else. Okay, so Chromanticore, D. Who believes Chromanticore can block a cursed spirit? Okay, why is Chromanticore able to block a cursed spirit?
It's
Okay, so Chromanticore is black. It is also white and blue and red and green, but that doesn't stop it from being black. So Chromanticore is clearly here to see if you understand that just because something has multiple colors doesn't stop it from counting as that one color, black, which is the important one in this particular case. So Chromanticore, yes, can block a cursed spirit, and we would circle or check mark that one to show it is a correct answer. But we can choose more than one if we want to for this answer, so let's look at Scholar of Athreos, E. Who believes that Scholar of Athreos is able to block a cursed spirit? Why can Scholar of Athreos not block a cursed spirit?
White is not part of it.
Right. So Scholar of Athreos is a white card, but it has a black ability, which does not make it a black card. But this is something that somebody might not realize, and so this is clearly testing whether you know that something with a black ability is not considered a black card. So in this case, D, Chromanticore, is the only correct answer. And having gone through and read all of each creature and make sure we've looked at all the options, we know that that's the only correct answer. This is an example that I put on here to illustrate the point. RTFC. Read the friendly card.
friendly, huh?
The F sometimes stands for something else, but we're going with friendly.
It's not friendly, they're attacking.
We're going with friendly
Furious.
for today. Okay, so it's very important to read all of the abilities on each creature and each permanent and each spell that is mentioned on the judge test, because sometimes the ones that you weren't expecting to matter, like the Gnarled Scarhide not being able to block, are things that will affect the question, and it's not the thing that you were originally looking for. I actually got a question wrong on a practice test that involved a similar situation. It wasn't these exact cards, but it involved a creature that said this creature cannot block, which I just completely didn't realize. And so that stuck with me. So I'm passing that on to you guys. Okay. So let's see. Who can tell me the steps to the combat phase? Raise your hand, somebody who is not an L2. Okay.
Beginning of combat, declare attackers, declare blockers, damage, end of combat.
Okay. And sometimes
Sometimes first
strike
strike combat.
Yeah. Okay. So let's go to a death of 3. I missed that.
Triple strike.
Yeah. And now with unsets, we now sometimes have last strike. But either way, that's not actually relevant to this particular example. Okay, once more we're back with Chromanticore, because when I made this I decided to reuse the same creature so I can cut and paste them onto my Okay. Aaron attacks with Chromanticore. Naomi blocks with both Quickling and Carrion Crow. Which of the following best describes how Chromanticore's damage assignment order is announced and when Chromanticore assigns combat damage? Okay, we've got the text for Comanticore, we've got the text for Quickling, and we've got the text for Carrion Crow. We read the abilities on these, and it seems like the things that are going to be relevant are the fact that the Quickling and the Carrion Crow both have flying and therefore are legally able to block Comanticore, and that they do not have First Strike and Comanticore does. But other than that, none of the abilities of them are relevant to this particular question. Okay, A. There is no damage assignment order announced for Comanticore. In the damage assignment step, Aaron assigns a total of 4 damage, distributing it in any way he wishes between the 2 blocking creatures. Okay, who would want to circle or underline or notate anything next to anything in option A? Okay?
Damage assignment step.
Great. So we listed the steps to the combat phase prior to this question, specifically so we could point out the fact that that step does not exist. And yet on every judge test it's mentioned. I don't know why. Just internalize it. There is no damage assignment step. It doesn't exist. Any answer that mentions it is wrong. Just period. It is. Okay, so yes, there is no damage assignment step. That is correct. Okay, so how about B? Aaron announces Comanticore's damage assignment order in the damage assignment step. Comanticore's combat damage is assigned in the first combat damage step. Okay, we just noticed that there's no damage assignment step. There still isn't one. It didn't appear between A and B. It still doesn't exist. Okay, C. Aaron announces Comanticore's damage assignment order in the declare blocker step. Comanticore's combat damage is assigned in the damage assignment step. Again. So, but if you didn't in your head list the steps of the combat phase and know that this step doesn't exist, a lot of people will take the test, go into it, read all the answers, and be like, well, it's mentioned in this many answers, maybe it does exist, maybe I was wrong, and they'll start doubting themselves. Trust the knowledge you went into the test with. You know the steps of the combat phase. You know this step doesn't exist. Don't let the test, just because it keeps mentioning it, trick you into thinking that it does exist. This works for damage assignment step and for a whole bunch of other things. Don't let the test make you second guess the knowledge you know you have. Okay, so D. Aaron announces Comanticore's damage assignment order in the declare blocker step. Comanticore's combat damage is assigned in the first combat damage step. Anything about this one? This one does not mention the damage assignment step. So anything about this one anyone would want to circle or underline or notate? Anything? This one looks solid, but let's go to E and see what E says. There is no damage assignment order announced for Comanticore. In the first combat damage step, Aaron assigns a total of 4 damage, distributing it in any way he wishes between the 2 blocking creatures. Okay, this one does not mention the damage assignment step. Okay, can anyone underline or circle anything that you would make a note for in answer E?
No damage assignment order.
Okay, so no damage assignment order. We know that at some point a damage assignment order is going to be announced. So we know that this cannot be correct because it says that it's not going to be announced. So again, we go in with that knowledge and we trust ourselves with that, and so we know that the answer is D. Aaron announces Comanticore's damage assignment order in the declare blocker step. Comanticore's combat damage is assigned in the first combat damage step. Okay, so for 2 and 3, is there anyone who got these incorrect when you took it yourself?
I'll be honest, yeah.
Okay.
I did read the can't block.
Okay.
I'm not.
Yeah. As I said, I stumbled into that myself.
And when you pulled it up, it's like, that guy can't block.
Yeah. Okay.
I saw the extra
So RTFC, very important. All right. So. And the tips,
Yeah, and then you eliminate that. And I read through it. I read right over it.
yeah, the tips that I'm giving you don't only work on rules questions, they also work on policy questions. So my last example, which will be new for those of you who've heard this presentation before, is a policy question that I created a few days ago. Okay, so let's read example 4. Addison is playing a game of Standard against Nathan at their local store's F&M. Addison slams down a forest for turn and says, "Finally, a second green source! I cast my Verter Spearhook!" Nathan looks at the board and says, "Wait, if that's your second green, how'd you cast the Bristling Hydra 3 turns ago?" Both players look at the board state and Addison says, "Oops. Judge?" You approach the table. How do you handle the situation? Okay, we've got stats for Verter Spearhook and Bristling Hydra. I will just tell you the only thing that's relevant about these is that they both use double green and they're both standard legal. Okay, so A. The game state is irreparable. Addison receives a game loss for an upgraded game rule violation. Nathan receives no penalty. Who believes that, or who would circle or underline anything or make a note about anything and answer A? Okay, let's go to you.
It uses the IPG, which this is an F&M, so it's not going to be using the IPG at all. So anything that references IPG should instantly be thrown out.
That is correct. So on policy questions, in the first line of a policy question, it will always say so-and-so and so-and-so are playing at the store's F&M, or at a PPTQ, or at a GP. It will always tell you the event, which will allow you to, with your knowledge, know what REL the event takes place at. We know that F&Ms take place at regular REL, which uses the jar and not the IPG. One thing you could circle is F&M, just right off the bat, and mark like regular REL next to it or something like that to remind yourself that any answers you want to view through the lens of regular REL. A lot of people I know taking the L1 test will tend to want to give penalties and stuff to people at regular REL events in these questions because they don't realize that they're not appropriate. Okay, so that's correct. Game loss is not something, especially for an upgraded game rule violation. That's definitely an IPG reference. Okay, so those should be circled, and you put like regular REL. B. Too much has happened to back up, so leave the game state as it is. Addison receives a warning for a game rule violation, and Nathan receives a warning for a failure to maintain game state. Okay, so this one, same thing. Okay, so again, regular REL, we don't give game rule violations or failure to maintain game state or warnings. None of these things exist in regular REL. This is, however, what I think the correct answer would be at competitive REL. If that means anything. A is also not only the IPG, I believe it's an outdated version of the IPG. So, yeah. A was purposely made as an outdated version of the IPG that's not even like current. C. Both players are responsible for the game state. Too much has happened to back up. Disqualify both Addison and Nathan or move them to the tournament. Who believes this is the correct answer? DQ no prize.
We have two hands up.
Okay, so if let's say someone going into an L1 test answered B on this, I would say their mindset is probably, they're thinking what would be right at competitive REL, they're not thinking at regular REL, they missed the word F and M. If somebody answers C and they're taking their L1 test, I have some questions for their way of handling situations at any tournament that they feel that this particular...
Sir, people, I want to fair games of magic.
Yeah, I mean, I made an honest mistake. DQ! So,
DQ no prizes.
DQ no prize, everything. No, there's no IPG, no jar, just DQ everyone.
Yeah,
okay, so that's obviously an incorrect answer. Okay, D. Too much has happened to back up, so leave the game state as it is. Caution both players to play more carefully. Neither Addison nor Nathan receive any penalty. Anything that you would circle or underline in this one?
Caution.
The whole answer.
Okay, what would you note for caution?
Caution just, it's not a warning, but it's like, don't do this.
That it is, but would you say that is a positive or a negative against the answer?
Positive.
Okay. And then, okay, so then there's nothing specifically to throw D out, but we're going to read E. Back up to the point of the initial infraction, when Addison illegally cast the bristling hydra, Addison receives a warning for game rule violation, and Nathan receives a warning for failing to maintain game state. This is actually the alternate that I could see argument for at competitive REL. I would go with B for competitive, but E is probably not. But I could see an argument. But either way, neither of them are correct for F and M.
3 turns? You're gonna back up 3 turns?
Probably not. As I said, B definitely seems like competitive to be the correct answer. But at regular, which is where we are at F and M, we're definitely going with D, where we caution the players to play more carefully, have them continue playing, and hope they don't make a mistake in the future. But that is the way we handle things according to the jar at regular REL. Okay.
Get out of the store.
Hey, one of my options had get out of the store as an option. It wasn't the right one, but
Yeah,
that
like I
was.
said, it was closer than some of these other ones.
So, it was legal according to the jar, but probably not correct.
Yeah.
Okay, so, we have,
DQ.
always, good, okay.
Oh, it's time.
Always look at the type of tournament that the question scenario is set in, and it'll tell you if it's regular REL, competitive REL, or in theory, professional REL, which will help you select the correct answer. Because if you know what sort of mindset you should be in looking at the answer, it'll help you understand it. Because if I had said that same situation happened at a PPTQ, the answer would have changed to a different one of the answers. So looking at which tournament it is definitely an important thing. Also, I'm sure you all know this, but regular REL tournaments do not give warnings. They do not give match losses, I think except for tardiness. And then, so technically you can get a match loss for tardiness, you can get a game loss for upgraded not listening to the judge repeatedly after many cautions, but you are never going to get a warning at a regular REL tournament, and it's very, very rare you're going to get a game loss or match loss. And you could get DQ'd, but only for the serious problems in the IPG, not for making a common mistake at an FNM. Okay, so those are my examples. Some other general helpful hints are some people who take tests like the strategy of going back after you're done and hiding your original answers and basically taking the test a second time. Some people feel that it gives them the opportunity to see if they maybe think of things a different way and possibly get something correct that they would have gotten wrong otherwise. There are two types of people: the people who think that's the way to go, and the people who think they're just going to second guess themselves and get questions wrong that they would have gotten correct otherwise. I'm in the second camp. I personally do not like retaking my tests. I can't bring myself to do it, and I tend to be a decent test taker, hence making this presentation. So I think that you just have to know yourself of whether that would help you. If you do decide to go that route, definitely covering up your original answers would be the best bet for making sure that you don't use those to bias yourself in your second time taking it. Also, if you're going to take it again, take it from the bottom up. So if it's a 100-question test, instead of starting with question 1 and going 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, start at question 100 and go 99, 98, 97, 96, and so on, so that you're looking at it in a different order, and maybe that'll change your perspective enough to make you get that bit of extra inspiration that you would have gotten otherwise. Also, sometimes tests will have information later in the test that just is given as part of a question that was part of an answer at a different part of the test. So if you take it in the other order, you might be like, oh yeah, that helped me with this. And that could also sometimes help. So keep an eye out for that, but don't necessarily expect it. So if you're already writing on your test with things that you think are correct or not correct, or like that eliminate answers, I don't know how much help going through it again would be, but if you feel that it would help you, I definitely recommend covering the answers that you gave the first time and going from the bottom up the second time you take it. Also, for some visually minded people, it might help to use basic lands to represent creatures on the battlefield or objects on the stack. Whenever you take a judge test, you're always given at least one of each basic land, sometimes more, to use as aids in whatever way you feel. You can, usually stores will not care if you write on their basic lands. They have tons of them. So you could write like the power tokens of creatures on them, you could make notes of different things, you could use them to represent spells on the stacks. You're like, okay, so this resolves, and then this is still there, and then this resolves. So a lot of people find the lands to be useful in a variety of ways to represent a variety of things in order to make it so that, again, you don't have to keep as much in your head. If you're visually looking at it, it might help you to be able to see it sort of, instead of trying to see it all in your head, you can see it in front of you, and then that might help with getting the correct answers. Also, I was just about to say something and I forget what it was. Oh well. Make sure you schedule your exam for a time when you're not exhausted or sick. If you just spent 12 hours judging, you probably won't be in the right mindset to do your best on a really difficult exam. And if you find that you did schedule it for either a day of judging and maybe you didn't sleep well the night before, you thought you'd be okay after that many hours, but you realize you're just not feeling it, it's okay to reschedule. Don't psych yourself out and reschedule for no reason, but if you need to, like if you're sick or if you're exhausted or if something came up in your personal life that you're dealing with, it's okay to wait another week or month or 2 months to take the test. Judges will work with you to reschedule it, and you want to make sure that you give yourself every opportunity to do your best, which is basically the theme of this presentation. That you're going in, you've studied, you know your stuff, so if you're well rested, if you're prepared, if you know your stuff, some people, you always get a scrap piece of paper, some people going into it will take stuff they memorize, like steps of casting a spell, or the steps and phases of the turn, or the layers, or things like that, and they'll write it on the piece of paper so that they can reference it during the test. You can't bring in outside notes, but if you came in with it in your head, you can write it on the piece of paper, you had it in your head going into the test. And then when you're actually thinking about the individual questions, you don't have to split your attention to focus on, what was layer 7E? So that can also be a big help. Yeah, so that is my presentation. And does anyone have any questions? Anyone else have any advice they would like to share with their peers?
Awesome.
Thank you. I wore it for St. Patrick's Day because it's green.
I
I also have a
don't,
green shirt under my Central Region polo.
I don't like doing all of my answers again, but I do like at least checking the questions for any tripwires I may have missed. The cannot block thing.
Oh, really important thing. A lot of people will mark their answers on the test and then move them to the answer sheet at the end once they've double, triple confirmed that that's the answer they want to give. Make sure that the correct answer goes to the correct number on the answer sheet, because you're being graded on your answer sheet, not on your work on the test, and you need to turn it in matching correctly, so just be really careful when you transcribe it over. Also, sometimes people will be like, this question's really tough, I'm gonna skip it for now, I'm gonna move on, and then I'll come back to it later. If you skip the question on the test, skip the question on the answer sheet. If you're marking them down originally on the answer sheet, because you don't want to get like a 0% because every question you did is like moved one up and they're all wrong, but if you had shifted it down to what you intended, they'd all be correct. So make sure that the logistical test taking, like physical marking the sheet skills, just don't make that why you fail the test. Also, I always like the example that I think it's like taking your driver's license test, in that if you can drive and you have a legal driver's license, nobody gives a crap how many times it took you to take the test to get it. If you fail the first time and you pass the second time, or the third time, or the fourth time, you're still a judge. And at that point, nobody cares. Like, it just, once you pass the test, it doesn't, I mean, obviously you want to keep your skills sharp and everything, but if you're bad at test taking and you know your stuff, and don't just put it behind you, because each test is a fresh attempt, and after you pass it, nobody's going to care how many tries it took. So, that's my presentation.